Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salebox for the 1st of January 2014. My name is TotalBiscuit. I'm back from my Christmas break to give you today's Steam deals. As always, these will run for 24 hours and then we'll roll over down to the bottom of the Steam page, so do keep an eye out for that under the section called Yesterday's Big Deals. So if you did miss them today, do not worry, you'll be able to grab them tomorrow. Again, I apologize for the lack of videos, but as I said, I took a week off for Christmas to spend with the family, and it was very much needed. I hope you guys had a fantastic Christmas and a good new year, so let's begin, shall we, with some sales. The Walking Dead Season 2, 25% off. Takes down to $18.74, €17.24, and £14.24. Not an amazing deal at first glance. It's something that you would not expect in a Steam sale. 25% off, that's terrible. But it's worth bearing in mind, of course, that the original is also 75% off along with the 400 Days DLC. I think that's the second time that 400 Days has been discounted that deep, so it's worth picking it up at that point. The Telltale business model is a really weird one because you're basically pre-ordering something that's episodic. So when you buy Walking Dead Season 2, you're buying the episodes that aren't out yet. Same with A Wolf Among Us. So there is without question a risk attached to this. The reason there's a risk is because you have no idea whether the other episodes will actually be any good, and Telltale are for the most part pretty reliable, though they do have their dips. They did so certainly during the Sam and Max series. Some of the episodes were not up to the quality of the others. So if you want to play it safe, you should be buying the original Walking Dead because that's completely finished, and we know that it's actually good. You should also buy that before you play Season 2 because many of the decisions that you take within the original game do affect what's going on here. What is the game? If you don't already know, it's of course based on the Walking Dead graphic novels, which naturally inspired the TV series, although I've got to say I do find the TV series rather dull at times. The game is a bit of a mixture between a traditional point-and-click alongside some Heavy Rain-style QTE events, and this timed dialogue system that has really come to characterize the recent Telltale games, including, as I said before, The Wolf Among Us. And it's a very good system because it does force you to make decisions on the fly, and it's not necessarily obvious as to which is the right one. Indeed, it is not a game that really judges you morally for too many things. It judges you for your interactions with various characters. There's no morality bar in these games. So buying Walking Dead Season 2 is something that's a bit of a risk, but if you enjoyed the original and you were looking to get this slightly cheaper, this is a good time to do it. But bear in mind that it may be discounted further later on in the year after more episodes have come out. It really depends if you want to play it episodically or wait till the end, which could take God knows how long, really. We're still waiting for the next episode of The Wolf Among Us, so I have no idea how long it's going to take for them to actually release the new episodes of The Walking Dead. The Wolf Among Us came out in October, and we're still on episode 1 of that, so I don't even know. It's certainly hard to say, but if you're looking to get it a little bit cheaper and you're absolutely committed to playing the series as soon as the episodes come out, this is the best way to do it. Civilization 5, 75% off, that's $7.49, €7.49, £4.99, and the Australians get shafted. It is $17.49 over there for some reason. It's almost like they're trying to make some kind of point about how civilized Australia is. Regardless, Civ 5 on its own is not a very good game. Yeah? If you were going to buy a Civ game and you said, I don't want to buy any expansions whatsoever, which is the best as it starts, I would say Civ 4 is the best out of the box, but even that was a lot better with expansion packs. It often gets a bit complicated because of the different combinations of expansions and DLC and gold editions that are left to this one, so a lot of people ask me, well, exactly which set should you get? Well, you might think the gold edition is the best value, and it kind of is. It contains the expansion as well as a bunch of DLC, so it's got 11 DLC packs and one expansion, which is Gods and Kings. Now, Civ 5 with Gods and Kings is a pretty good game. It adds a religion system and really improves a lot of the mechanics of the game. It makes it an awful lot better. However, the DLC that you get is really just a bunch of extra civilizations. Now, annoyingly enough, the game does not allow you to design your own civs, which is pretty infuriating because it's obvious that they wanted to sell you some of the cooler civilizations as DLC. So that's just a little bit galling, to say the least. Now, Here's the thing, you could buy the Gold Edition, and it's pretty good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you buying the Gold Edition, you pile all that extra DLC on top of it, and you get a pretty good game with Gods and Kings, but the game is best when played with Brave New World, and you don't need Gods and Kings to play with Brave New World, but you do need the original game. So the total cost of that would be around $17, yeah, because you're paying about $10 extra or whatever your regional equivalent happens to be for Brave New World, which is only 66% off. So you start to give yourself a little bit of a headache here. What do you miss out on? If you get Brave New World and Civ 5 and you don't get Gods and Kings, you miss out on the civilizations that were added in Gods and Kings, but not the mechanics that were added in Gods and Kings. So you don't need it for that. So it really comes down to how valuable you think the civilization packs actually are. There's another DLC pack down to the bottom called the Cradle of Civilization pack. You can really ignore that. It's basically just a map pack, so that doesn't actually add any civilizations into the game, so you can ignore that completely. I think the best way to go with this one is to buy Civ 5 and Brave New World if you want the complete experience. The Gold Edition otherwise is pretty good. If you're looking for the best value, it's gotta be the Gold Edition, of course. God, why can't they just make this easy? A Game of the Year edition with everything would be nice, but Brave New World did come out fairly recently. It came out in July of last year, so it's not entirely unexpected that they wouldn't want to bundle that one just yet. It's still selling pretty well. What does Brave New World actually add? Well, it adds 3 main mechanics, including trade routes, ideologies, the World Congress, as well as a bunch of new civilizations, wonders, a brand new culture victory with a whole new culture system involving creating great works and storing them in various cities. It's pretty great, honestly, and the AI improvements are what really got me with this one. The AI in the original Civ was just not good. And by the original Civ, of course, I mean Civ 5 without any expansions. By the time we got to Brave New World, the actual AI acted in a much more reasonable fashion, and the game was just a lot more interesting as a direct result of that. So it's certainly the definitive version of Civ 5, and you may want to consider picking it up. It is a massive time vampire, but it's quite easy to get into. One of the more simplistic grand strategies, easily one of the most accessible. Valdis Story Abyssal City, 75% off. That's $3.74, €3.49, and £2.99. The example of both a successful Kickstarter and a successful Greenlight campaign brings you this indie Metroidvania title, which is really quite nice. I played a bit of it, and I enjoyed what I played of it. The combat system is actually surprisingly engaging, which is not usually what you expect out of a Metroidvania title. The graphics are a little bit hit and miss. Like, for me, I'm really in two minds as to whether or not I actually like the graphic style of this game. I have a feeling, though, that's a very subjective criticism to make. The only thing that I can objectively point to is that it's sometimes a little bit difficult to determine what's in the foreground and what's in the background. But aside from that, it really comes down to what you personally find aesthetically pleasing. The one big beef that I've got with this game is that the default controls are just awful, so you really want to be trying to rebind them or play it with a controller. However, what you will find is a rather nice Metroidvania game with some RPG mechanics tossed in there for good measure and a solid combat system. What I would say is that the game is less open than it looks. It does have a number of mechanics, such as one-way doors, which stop you from going back to certain areas. So if you're looking for something that's totally open, it isn't. However, if you're willing to accept that, then what you'll find is a nice, cheap, cheerful, and very competent Metroidvania 2D platformer action thingy. Test Drive Unlimited 2, 75% off. That is $5, €5, and £3.74. So I had mixed feelings on this one as well. I like the idea behind it. Test Drive, at least recently, has been focused on more of this kind of car owner lifestyle thing as opposed to actually driving, yeah? It's supposed to be a car owner's fantasy game where everything associated with owning high-powered cars, including picking up women, yes, I'm actually deadly serious, is incorporated into this title. It also has a lot of online racing connectivity. Graphically, it's fairly impressive, and the PC port is alright. You know, it looks best on PC, but it's also a game that you really should be playing with a controller or a racing wheel, which is true for a lot of racing games, but especially with this one. There's a lot of licensed cars in it, and it looks very impressive, but I didn't really enjoy the physics of the driving. Again, I think that's something that's very subjective, but the physics engine of the game doesn't seem to be too fantastic. Also, at the time of actually looking at this title, they don't have any keys. So, I don't know what's going on with that. This is actually, I think, the second or third time I've seen a test drive title run out of keys. So I don't really know what's going on there over at Atari. But for some reason, you can't get a key for this right now. But you can kind of pre-order your key and get it once they restock them. So... yeah, it's an okay racing game, but it is one of those games which does allow you to experience more than just racing, which, frankly, in today's market is kind of important because there are so many bloody racing games, and they all seem to do exactly the same thing. Test Drive Unlimited at least tries to make an effort not to do that. Castle Story, 33% off. That is $13.39, €12.72, and £10.04. It's another early access game, guys, so beware. I have told you this time and again, I really, really don't like this trend that they've got going on with the Steam sales now of dumping in what is basically an early access title into the sale. You shouldn't be buying early access games unless you are absolutely, and I do mean absolutely, dedicated to the notion of what that game provides, and you want to help them develop it, really. You know, that's what early access is really all about, and with Castle Story in particular, the description of it says just that. Please read the disclaimer before you buy the game. Do you want to be involved in the evolution of the project? Do you want to? Because that's a good question, because if you don't buy it. Like, it's got a really interesting idea around it. It's kind of Dwarf Fortressy, and I have a feeling there's going to be a number of games in 2014 coming along that take the Dwarf Fortress idea and try and make it accessible to people. It's a voxel-based strategy game. You build castles, yeah? And you do so with an army of little creatures called Bricktrons, and then you try and defend the castle from everything that's coming at you in the really nasty world. So yeah, it is very Dwarf Fortressy. It's got this nice survival aspect to it. But it's not done yet. It's not even close to being done. Currently, the version of the game is 0.1.2.20 DC. That means ain't bloody done. Not even close. Don't buy the game if you're not absolutely committed to the ideas. It's not done. It's not finished. It's not even close to being finished. There's a bunch of really good finished games that are on sale right now. Why buy one that isn't? Mortal Kombat Complete, 66% off. That is $10.19, €9.51, and £8.49. And it's great. I'm sorry it is. I love Mortal Kombat. I really do. It was one of my favorite fighting games when it came out on the console, and it remains one of my favorite fighting games on PC. However, there are certainly some caveats to this. You can play it with the keyboard, but of course a fight stick is recommended for games like this. It looks okay, but I feel they could have done a better job when it comes to the PC options at making it just look an awful lot better. The texture quality wasn't really upgraded all that much. There's certainly more they could have done with it. And the online mode, when I played it around launch, was somewhat sketchy to say the least. It's not particularly well implemented for PC, the lobby system's a bit awkward, and I got a lot of disconnections, so that didn't really help. I've actually been playing mostly the single player and the challenge towers through again, which are entertaining, don't get me wrong, but if you're looking for multiplayer, I would hope that things have been fixed by now. It seems like they have. However, the game still has connection issues online from time to time. The biggest problem is there isn't a large enough player base to allow you to play a lot of local people, so you're going to end up playing people cross-region, which in a fighting game is going to be a lot laggier. So consider that. It's actually worth it, though, just for the single player. The challenge tower is very enjoyable, and the actual single-player campaign is easily one of the best that I've seen in fighting games, with a suitably cheesy retelling of the storyline from Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. Hammerwatch, 66% off. That is $3.39, €3.05, and £2.37. It looks like a roguelike, it smells like a roguelike, but it kind of isn't. It's just actually more like Gauntlet, as opposed to anything else, but with a hell of a lot more enemies. It's a hack-and-slash adventure. It's really as simple as that. It's got character progression, it's got 4 different classes, it's got a bunch of difficulty multipliers, and it also happens to have multiplayer co-op, which is nice. And I'm talking about online here, not just local, so that's good. The game also has modding support from the very outset with an editor, but it doesn't have Steam Workshop support, so that's a little bit awkward, and it makes it somewhat difficult to actually find and install mods for the game. The concern for a lot of people, I think, is that they'll be looking for this sort of level of roguelike depth and challenge, and they're not necessarily gonna find it. It's just a hack and slash, yeah? It doesn't really have much depth going for it. It's quite satisfying to play, but it can also get a little bit samey after a while, so if you are looking for an actual roguelike, this is not it. But it's a pretty fun hack and slash nonetheless, and for that price, it might be worth picking up, particularly if you happen to find a good number of people to play it with. That brings us to our deal of the day, which has got to be Just Cause 2. 80% off, $3, €3, and £1.99, especially considering they just brought out the multiplayer mod for that game. You should be getting this without a slight hint of hesitation. Absolutely. It's just great. Like, it's an incredibly fun open-world game that is focused on absolute chaos. It's still gorgeous to this day, which is kind of shocking. Back then, it was a graphical powerhouse, but it was very well optimized as well. Some people complained because it wouldn't run on Windows XP, which back when it came out in 2010 was actually kind of a big deal. But now, you're probably on Windows 7, so that's absolutely fine. It uses DirectX 10 stuff, so that's why it won't run on XP. But it is an incredibly fun game that is steeped in absolute total chaos. You can do the most ridiculous stuff in it, and it has a thriving modding scene as well, including guys that made a multiplayer mod for a single-player game, which is just ridiculous. The very notion that you could do that. Well, you can do that. And the multiplayer mod is now out, and it's a free add-on to the game, so there is no reason whatsoever why you should not be picking up Just Cause 2, unless you're still on XP. In which case, what the hell are you doing? Get Windows 7. What's wrong with you? Alright, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Salebox, and I'll see you next time.